The galaxy had gone quiet. The outer rim worlds, once vibrant with life and culture, now whispered only death. They had cried out for help, sent signal after signal, screamed into the dark. And no one answered. The galactic coalition was broken, its fleets shattered, its promises burned under the relentless advance of the Zarn dominion. The Zarn didn't conquer. They erased. They didn't leave survivors. They didn't build empires. They turned living planets into silent, scorched graveyards. Purity through destruction, they called it. Billions vanished without a trace. Cities were turned into oceans of glass. And beneath the ruins of what was once a proud capital planet, a man named Commander Kyle Varn sat in the darkness. His homeworld, Eridus, was dying. He had once led fleets across star systems. Now he led what was left of his people through collapsing tunnels and ancient bunkers buried under mountains of ash. His uniform was faded, torn in places. His hands, once clean and calloused from years of command, were now dirty from digging graves and carrying the wounded. Kyle had sent out one last transmission, powered by a salvaged generator, and hope. His voice, ragged and tired, echoed through empty frequencies. To anyone still listening, we are out of time. Eridus falls. Our people fall. We won't last another week. Please, if someone out there still gives a damn, come. But there was nothing. The coalition didn't respond. The mercenary guilds of Tyrian Prime refused. The vaunted peacekeepers of the Askar Order turned their eyes away. No one came. Until one day, the skies cracked. A ship, small, ugly, and old, tore through the upper atmosphere like a meteor. It didn't hover like the Zarn vessels. It didn't glide. It slammed into the earth with a sonic boom and an insult to gravity. Kyle's resistance squad gathered near the crater, weapons drawn. They didn't expect hope. They expected another Zarn drone or worse, a scavenger ship here to pick clean their bones. The dust cleared. The ship's door groaned open. Out walked a man. He wasn't tall or sleek like the Askar. He wasn't glowing with bio-armor like the Tavari Knights. He looked human. His armor was scratched and scorched, patched together with metal plates and burn tape. His beard was rough, his face scarred. He walked like someone who had fought battles that broke planets. He raised one hand in a casual wave. "You rang?" Kyle blinked. He thought he was hallucinating. "You're human?" The man smirked. "That's what my mother told me." "We thought your kind vanished after the Sol collapse," Kale said. "Yeah, well, we don't vanish. We just step out of the spotlight till things get interesting again." Kyle didn't know what to say. The humans had never taken part in galactic affairs. They'd isolated themselves after their political systems tore themselves apart. The universe had called them primitive, savage, unpredictable, and now they were here. "Name's Sergeant Jason Ward," the man said. "Earth heard the screaming, figured it was time to stretch our legs." The sound of more boots echoed behind him. Men and women stepped out of the ship, all armed to the teeth. Their armor didn't match. Their weapons were rugged, loud, and terrifyingly real. On their shoulders, faded patches of long-dead nations: America, Brazil, India, Russia, Nigeria, China, all together, side by side. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors, warriors. Kyle stepped forward. "You came all this way to die with us?" Jason dropped a heavy duffel bag at Kyle's feet. It hit the ground with a satisfying clunk. Inside weapons, earth weapons, bullets, grenades, kinetic hammers, crude tech, designed to kill. Jason's grin turned cold. "Number we came to make them wish they'd never met Earth." And just like that, hope returned to Eridus, not in the form of shining ships or clean promises, but in a handful of dirty, angry, battle-hardened humans with nothing to lose and a universe full of vengeance. The tunnels of Eridus were cold, cracked, and lined with rusted pipes that hissed every time someone passed too close. Kyle walked beside Sergeant Jason Ward, still unsure if this was a dream, a trap, or the beginning of something that would finally matter. Behind them, the Earth team moved like they'd done this 1,000 times before. No hesitation, no chatter. Just quiet, calculated movement. Kyle kept glancing sideways at Jason. The man didn't walk like an officer. He wasn't formal, but there was a weight to him, the kind you only carried after losing too much and surviving through things that should have killed you. "You said you heard the screaming," Cale muttered. "How?" Jason shrugged. "Old orbital satellite caught your signal, one of ours. Most folks thought it was junk, but turns out it still worked. That satellite's been out there for decades." Jason gave a half smile. "Yeah, guess we build stubborn too." They stopped in what used to be a food depot, now just a bunker with cracked floors and flickering light. Kyle's people gathered, eyes wide. There were only 30 of them left. Most had been wounded. The youngest fighter was 16, the oldest 70. They'd been surviving on ration powder and desperation. Kyle turned to the group. "This is Sergeant Jason Ward of Earth. He and his unit," Jason cut in, "call us what we are. We're not a unit. We're just a bunch of bastards from different corners of Earth who were tired of sitting back while the galaxy burned." Cale paused, then gave a small nod. "These warriors from Earth have come to fight with us." An awkward silence followed. Then, an older Thaleen woman stepped forward. Her face was pale and drawn, a bandage around her neck. "Why now?" she asked. "Why you?" Jason didn't flinch. "Because nobody else would." He walked to the center of the room, pulled out a small device, and tossed it on the table. It flared to life, a crude hologram of Eridus, with dozens of red marks pulsing across the map. "Zarn outposts," Jason said. "We did some recon on the way in. They're spread thin, which is good for you. They've gotten lazy." "You were only here for an hour," Cale said, narrowing his eyes. Jason pointed to the sky. "You think we just showed up? We've been watching for weeks." "You planned to come?" Kyle asked, stunned. "We don't walk into fights blind," Jason said. "And when humans commit to something, we go all the way." He looked around the room. "You've been fighting like prey, no offense, but hiding, running, hoping the Zarn ignore you isn't going to save you. We don't fight like that on Earth." "Then how do you fight?" asked a boy from the back. Jason stepped closer, voice lowering. "We become the nightmare they think they are. We strike when they sleep. We bleed them from the shadows. We hit their food, their fuel, their arrogance, and then we make them run." Kyle watched as his people slowly stood straighter. The words, they meant something. Not because they were pretty, but because Jason believed them like they were the only religion that ever mattered. Later that night, in a supply chamber repurposed into a war room, Kyle leaned over a table with Jason and his team. Maps, crude digital feeds, and hand-drawn plans filled every inch. "You said you found a weak point?" Cale asked. Jason tapped a blinking mark on the map. "Outpost 9, it's small. 2 Zarn patrols rotate every 6 hours, but they've got a relay tower we can hijack. You want to send a message?" Jason smiled darkly. "Number I want to jam theirs, cut them off, isolate them, make them scared." Kyle felt something deep in his chest. Not just hope, something more dangerous. Belief. As they finalized the strike, Kyle noticed something. Jason's knuckles were bruised. His shoulder had a fresh scar. He hadn't come untouched. This wasn't a game to him. "You've lost people too, haven't you?" Kyle asked. Jason didn't answer at first. He looked out the cracked window into the dead surface above. My brother died in the collapse of New Tokyo. My sister starved during the Dome riots. My best friend got vaporized when the Zarn tested a weapon on Mars's orbit station. He turned to Kale. You're not the only ones who've lost everything, but we learned to turn loss into rage, and rage into war. Kyle didn't speak. He just nodded. Maybe the galaxy had given up on Eridus. Maybe even Kyle had. But Earth hadn't. And Earth didn't come to mourn. It came to fight. The wind on the surface of Eridus howled like a dying animal, thick with ash and fine dust that turned the sky into a dull shade of rust. The world above ground had been dead for months, bombarded into silence by Zarn warships. And yet, that night, under the cover of a starless sky, a group of humans and Thaline fighters moved across the cracked terrain like shadows with purpose. Commander Kyle crouched behind a rusted transport husk, scanning the horizon. He'd done countless missions in his life, but something about this one felt different. Not just because they were striking back, but because the ones leading them were completely unafraid. Reckless, even. Jason Ward moved ahead like he'd been born for it. Silent, steady, a knife in human form. His team, just 8 of them, moved with him. 2 snipers, a demolitions expert, a hacker named Lynn, and others Kyle hadn't learned the names of yet. Earth didn't have ranks, not anymore. What they had was experience, and it showed in every step. Outpost 9 stood ahead, a squat black structure pulsing faint green. Its walls were lined with sensor arrays and turret mounts. 2 Zarn patrols circled it every few minutes, as expected. Tall, spider-limbed monsters with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that pulsed like embers. Kyle felt the familiar rise of fear, the cold chill behind his ribs. But when he looked to his side, Jason was grinning like a man about to start a bar fight. You really enjoy this, Kyle muttered. Jason whispered, what's not to love? Break their tower, mess with their heads, send them running. It's what I live for. Kyle looked ahead. You're insane. Jason flashed a wicked smirk. That's how we survived. Suddenly, a soft buzz came over the comms. Lynn's voice, crisp and calm. Sensors looped. You've got a 3-minute window. Move. Jason tapped Kale's shoulder. Showtime. They sprinted low across the wasteland, diving into a ditch just as the patrol turned. Lynn's loop was working. For now. Jason motioned to the demolitions guy, a mountain of a man named Reyes. He moved up to the wall and began placing charges with the ease of someone who'd done this more times than he could count. Kyle helped him plant the last one. Charges set, Reyes said. Breach on your mark. Jason raised 3 fingers. Kyle held his breath. 3, 2, 1. Boom! The wall didn't just break. It disintegrated. A burst of smoke and metal dust flew into the air, and before it even cleared, the team was inside. Gunfire erupted. Short, violent bursts of kinetic rounds that slammed into Zarn soldiers mid-turn. The Thalian had never seen weapons like this before. No energy beams, no fancy plasma, just brutal, unstoppable chunks of metal that shredded through exoskeletons. Kyle raised his rifle and followed Jason through the breach. He watched the man leap over a burning console and put 2 rounds into a Zarn soldier's eye cluster without breaking stride. It was war, the old way. No rules, no treaties, just survival. Inside, the relay tower was still intact, blinking with a soft blue light. Lynn was already working on the console, hands flying over a small human datapad connected through 100 makeshift wires. We're in, she said. Give me 30 seconds. Kyle covered the doorway as Reyes and the others held off the second patrol. Jason reloaded calmly beside him, popping another magazine into his rifle. Why kinetic weapons? Kale asked between shots. Jason chuckled. You ever seen a Zarn shield stop a lead slug moving at 1,000 meters per second? Me neither. Lynn shouted. Got it. Jamming field active. Local comms are scrambled. Jason looked at Kyle. Now we make him paranoid. They planted a small device in the server, a looping signal playing Zarn distress calls and garbled screams, rigged to repeat every 2 minutes. Psychological warfare. Jason's specialty. Let's go, Kale barked, adrenaline now fully in his blood. They stormed out just as the next wave of Zarn reinforcements arrived. But something had changed. The aliens hesitated, confused. Their orders weren't coming through. Their commands were static. They didn't know where to go, who to kill. Jason turned and fired one last shot. The Zarn soldier's head burst open like overripe fruit. They fell back across the plain, ducking low, making it to the hidden tunnel before the enemy regrouped. Inside, breathing hard, Kale leaned against the stone wall. His ears rang, his arms ached, but his chest was on fire, not with pain but something raw and unfamiliar. Jason clapped him on the back. Not bad for your first proper strike? Kale coughed, then smiled through the blood on his lip. We're still alive. Jason looked back at the smoke rising above the ridge. Yeah, but they're about to realize we're not just alive. He paused, eyes sharp. We're hunting now. The following morning, the Zarn outpost still burned, a blackened smear on the wasteland of Eridus. Smoke spiraled up like a warning into the pale sky, and for the first time in months, it wasn't a Zarn beacon, but a symbol of resistance, of defiance. Down in the tunnels, the mood had shifted. Kale noticed it immediately. His people stood taller. The hopeless silence had turned into low murmurs of excitement. The young ones whispered about the human weapons, the way Jason fought like the Zarn were nothing more than obstacles. Even the elders, the ones who'd seen entire cities fall, carried the faintest spark in their eyes. Kyle watched it all from the shadows, arms folded. He wasn't sure how he felt. Victory, yes. Relief, of course. But there was also something else eating at him. Guilt. They'd needed humans to remind them how to fight. Jason sat on a crate nearby, disassembling his rifle with methodical precision. He caught Kale's stare and raised an eyebrow. What? Worried I'll shoot myself cleaning it? Kyle walked over. Number just trying to understand what kind of world raises men like you. Jason chuckled, sliding a fresh round into the chamber. A broken one. Same as yours. Difference is we don't pretend it's ever going to be fixed. Kale sat across from him. You fight like someone who's already lost everything. Jason's hands paused. Because I have. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The silence said enough. Your strike worked, Kyle said. The Zarn scrambled all night. Interference spread to 3 nearby patrol zones. They've rerouted units, repositioned outposts. They're afraid. Jason nodded. Good. That's part 1. Next, we bleed them. Kyle narrowed his eyes. You make it sound easy. It's not, Jason replied. But it is simple. War's not about clean wins. It's about making your enemy spend more blood than they can afford. And the Zarn, they've never had to pay a price. He stood, slinging his rifle across his shoulder. We change that. Today. That afternoon, Kyle and Jason gathered the resistance in the main chamber. Dust filtered down from the ceiling like falling snow. Maps were laid across makeshift tables. Reyes was sharpening a combat blade the size of Kale's forearm. Lynn was already working on hacking into abandoned coalition satellites. Jason stood in front of them all and started pointing at locations on the map. Zarn fuel convoys, they move supplies from the East Crater up to their fortress near the equator line. No escorts, no armor. They rely on fear to keep routes safe. That ends now. He looked around the room. We hit the next convoy, fast, loud. We burn everything, take nothing. Let them wonder what we're after. One of Kyle's lieutenants, a young man named Oro, raised a shaky hand. You want to destroy fuel? We could use it. Our reserves are nearly gone. Jason shook his head. We don't want their tech, their fuel, or their scraps. We want them to feel the loss, make it sting. That fuel keeps their airships running, their barracks warm, their weapons powered. Take it from them and you force them to fight cold and scared. Kale backed him up. He's right. This isn't about surviving anymore. It's about hurting them. That night, they moved again. 2 human snipers went ahead, setting up on a high ridge. Kyle, Jason, and a strike team of Thaleen fighters waited in the dead forest that bordered the old supply road. Their weapons had been upgraded with human modifications, rail stabilizers, extended mags, sharpened edges. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. The convoy arrived just after midnight. 4 fuel haulers, protected by only 2 Zarn scouts, walking like they didn't expect trouble. Arrogance. Predictable. Jason leaned in close to Coyle. Now watch how Earth handles arrogance. He gave a sharp whistle. That was the signal. A moment later, both scouts dropped. 2 clean headshots from the ridge. No sound. No scream. Just 2 collapses in the dirt. Then came the fire. Reyes lobbed an incendiary grenade under the first hauler. It detonated with a gut-punching roar, spraying liquid fire in every direction. The convoy halted, drivers panicking inside their vehicles. Kyle's team rushed in, guns blazing. The Thaleen were different now. No hesitation. No fear. They fought like soldiers possessed. Kyle watched a boy no older than 17 rip a Zarn rifle off the ground and beat one of the drivers unconscious with the butt. Jason tore through the side of a hauler with his blade, yanking a fuel line free and spraying it across the flames. Within 5 minutes, it was done. Smoke curled into the sky, nothing left but fire, ash, and the scent of burnt oil. Jason stood amid the wreckage, face lit by the flickering blaze. Kale approached him, eyes wide. We won again. Jason didn't smile this time. Number they lost. Big difference. Suddenly, Kyle's comm buzzed. Lynn's voice came through, crackling but urgent. Commander, you need to get back. Now we've got company. What kind? Kale asked. She hesitated. Zarn command ship. Just dropped from orbit. They're not sending patrols anymore. Jason's eyes narrowed. They're sending monsters. The ground trembled beneath Kyle's boots long before he saw the ship. Dust spilled from the tunnel ceilings back at base. Pipes groaned. Lights flickered. It wasn't just noise. It was pressure. Like the planet itself was bracing for what had just landed. Kyle stood in the central chamber, watching Lynn scramble to stabilize the sensors. Jason leaned against a rusted beam, jaw clenched tight, his usual smirk gone. He was calm, but not relaxed, and that told Kale everything he needed to know. Mass reading just spiked off the charts, Lynn said, eyes wide. It's not a standard carrier. It's a planetary suppressor-class dreadnought. They dropped it like they were slamming the table. Jason cursed under his breath. They just got personal. Kyle looked over the data. They know it's us. Yeah, Jason replied. They figured out it's not some random riot. They're coming to squash it before the fire spreads. Reyes loaded up without needing an order. His expression was grim, silent, like a man preparing to dig his own grave, but determined to take someone down with him. The others followed. No speeches, no last-minute prayers, just the cold readiness of warriors who had finally remembered who they were. Kyle pulled Jason aside as the others prepped for evacuation. What are we dealing with? Jason hesitated before answering. Zarn elites, Genetically engineered command units. They don't patrol, they hunt. Each one is a walking war crime. They're faster, stronger, smarter. They don't retreat. They don't negotiate. They were bred for one thing: extermination. Kyle's pulse quickened. How many? Too early to tell, Jason said, but even one is a nightmare. The tunnel lights flickered again. Then the first boom came, not from an explosion but a footfall. Cale turned to the corridor. The tremors were steady, rhythmic, getting closer. The silence that followed made it worse. No Zarns screamed, no drones buzzed. It was like they knew fear wasn't necessary. Their presence was enough. Then came the sound, a metallic rasp like a sword being dragged across steel. Jason raised his rifle. Positions! Eyes forward! Kyle took cover behind a support pillar, watching as the darkness ahead seemed to fold in on itself. And then it stepped into view. A Zarn elite. It stood nearly 9 feet tall, its body armored in a biometal exosuit that pulsed like living muscle. Its face was a void of overlapping plates, hiding any hint of expression. Its right arm ended in a tri-bladed weapon that hummed with contained plasma. Its eyes, if you could call them that, glowed red like coals in a dead fire. Kyle barely had time to speak before it charged. Jason didn't hesitate. He opened fire, bullets slamming into the elite's torso. Sparks flew, flesh split, but the thing kept coming. Not slowed. Not staggered. Reyes stepped out with a grenade launcher and fired point blank. The explosion rocked the chamber. Stone cracked. Pipes burst. Smoke swallowed the air. But the elite walked through it. Jason shouted, "Fall back! New line! North Hall!" Kyle grabbed one of his men, dragging him away from the debris as the monster swept through the squad like a storm. One of the Tholene fighters tried to block it, only for the elite to impale him through the chest and toss him aside like garbage. Reyes didn't run. He charged. He slammed into the elite with a war cry, blade raised high, and managed to dig the edge into its side, just deep enough to make it roar. But Reyes didn't get to celebrate. The elite's blade swept once, clean, silent, and Reyes fell in 2 pieces, hitting the floor with a sickening thud. Jason shouted in rage and emptied his rifle into the creature's exposed flank. This time it reeled, not far, not much, but enough. Kyle saw it too, its shoulder, cracked, weak spot. Kyle rolled forward, picking up Reyes's discarded launcher. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He fired. The round struck the elite directly in the wounded joint, detonating in a thunderclap of metal and flame. The creature staggered, howled, then collapsed against the wall in a heap. It wasn't dead, but it wasn't moving. The survivors pulled back quickly, dragging the wounded, eyes wide, hands shaking. The battle was over. For now. Jason knelt beside Reyes's body, his jaw clenched, his face unreadable. Then he reached down and picked up the man's combat blade, attaching it to his own harness. Kyle stood beside him. "He saved us all." Jason nodded slowly. "He always said he'd die fighting monsters." Kyle looked at the broken elite. "That wasn't a monster. That was a message." Jason's voice dropped to a growl. "Then we'll send one back." Smoke still hung in the air like a curse when they laid Reyes's body to rest beneath the tunnels. It was a quiet burial. No hymns, no ceremonial rites. Just a group of tired, hardened fighters lowering a warrior into the dirt. The only sound came from Jason as he scratched a simple phrase into the wall beside the grave with the edge of Reyes's blade. He didn't run. Kyle stood nearby, arms crossed, fists tight. His chest was heavy, grief, rage, exhaustion, all twisted into a single knot that wouldn't release. He'd lost many people since the fall of Eridas, but Reyes's death hit differently. The man hadn't belonged to Eridas. He could have stayed home, could have lived. but he'd chosen to fight for people who weren't even his. That kind of loyalty was rare. Jason didn't speak for a while. He just stared at the wall. Then finally, in a voice low and graveled, he said, "We're done playing defense." Kyle nodded once. "I agree." Jason turned to face the group. Most of them were scraped, bruised, shell-shocked. Reyes had been the heart of the human unit, and now that heart had been ripped out. But what remained was resolve. Cold, sharp, unbreakable. "We hit the dreadnought," Jason said. The room fell into stunned silence. Lynn blinked. "You want to hit the dreadnought? That thing's a fortress." Jason didn't flinch. "Exactly. That's why they sent it. It's not just about firepower. It's psychological warfare. They're planting their flag, telling the galaxy Eridus is over." Kale stepped forward, eyes locked on Jason. "You want to prove them wrong?" Jason gave the faintest nod. "We hit it. We blow something critical. Not enough to destroy it, but enough to embarrass them. Show the Zarn that not even their monsters are untouchable." Lynn sighed. "It's suicide." Jason looked her straight in the eyes. "So was building a resistance on a dead planet. So was Reyes charging that elite. We're past the point of logic. Either we hit back now or we wait to die slower." Kyle rubbed his jaw, then asked the only question that mattered. "What's the plan?" Jason pulled up a crude schematic on an old display tablet, grainy scans stitched together from stolen data and drone recon. The ship's anchored just north of the Great Scar, half buried in the canyon. They've deployed only minimal guards. Arrogant bastards think no one's dumb enough to attack them here, which means the underside's exposed. That's where the core conduit runs. If we breach the vent housing and overload the plasma line, we can cook half their systems. Kyle squinted at the layout. "You're sure?" "No," Jason admitted. "But it's better than sitting around while they bomb us one tunnel at a time." Silence again. Then Oro, the young Thaleen who'd doubted him once, stepped forward. "I'll go." Another Thaleen, a woman with a shattered jaw wrapped in cloth, nodded silently. One by one, hands rose. Not many, but enough. Kyle took a breath. "You'll need a team to run interference. We can set up a diversion on the South Ridge, force them to reroute security." Jason nodded. "You take the noise, I'll take the fire." Lynn started working instantly. "I'll hack into the old mining relays near the canyon. If I can loop the satellite surveillance for 15 minutes, that's your window." 15 minutes. That was all they'd get. 15 minutes to crawl beneath a war machine and light a fire in the guts of a beast that had never known pain. Later that night, Kyle sat alone in what had once been a communications room. The consoles were dead. Wires dangled from the ceiling like veins torn from a corpse. He remembered when this room had been filled with voices, commanders, soldiers, families. Now it was just him and the ghosts. Jason walked in, tossing him a canteen. "You good?" Kyle drank, then looked up. "You think we'll survive this?" Jason sat beside him, back against the wall. "No." Kyle raised a brow. "Then why do it?" Jason looked up at the ceiling, like he could see the stars through the stone. "Because if we hit them here, and someone out there hears about it, another planet, another world, maybe they fight back too. And maybe one day the Zarn realize they shouldn't have pushed us this far." Kyle looked down at his worn-out gloves, then back at the man beside him. "You really think humans can win this war?" Jason smiled, not with pride, but something deeper, older. "We don't have to win." He stood, shouldering his rifle. "We just have to make sure they never forget what happens when you back Earth into a corner." The night before the mission, the tunnels felt like a coffin. No one said it aloud, but every step, every final equipment check, every tightened strap was done like it was the last time. Jason didn't sleep. Neither did Kyle. They sat in silence near the tunnel entrance, listening to the wind scrape against the sealed hatch, waiting for the time to move. At 0300, Lynn's voice crackled through the comms. "Satellite loop engaged. You've got 15 minutes before they get eyes back on the canyon." Jason stood. "That's our window." Kyle adjusted his gear and turned to his strike squad. 8 Thelene fighters, 4 humans, and 1 mission that might as well have been a death sentence. No one flinched. No one asked questions. They knew what they were walking into. The journey to the Great Scar was silent. The team crossed the blackened plains under cover of an ash storm, their outlines barely visible even with infrared. The Zarn dreadnought loomed in the distance like a sleeping god, half buried in the cracked earth, its hull the size of a mountain. The metal groaned like it breathed. Jason pointed towards the canyon edge. "Diversion team peels left. Make it loud." Kyle nodded, giving him one last look. "If you don't make it back," Jason interrupted him. "I'm not here to make it back." And then he was gone, leading the infiltration unit into the canyon's mouth while Kyle and the others moved uphill. It took only seconds for the diversion to begin. Kyle's group detonated charges on a nearby ridge, sending a rock slide crashing down toward the dreadnought's southern perimeter. Zarn drones scrambled. Floodlights spun wildly, searching for enemies. Sirens blared like mechanical screams. Jason's team moved in through the lower vent structure, a narrow crevice tucked under the hull, exactly where Lynn had predicted. One wrong move, and the sensors would catch them. But Lynn had worked her magic. The relays were still blinded. They slipped through into a maintenance shaft that smelled like burned metal and chemicals. Inside, the dreadnought wasn't a machine. It was a body. Pipes pulsed like arteries. Vents hissed like lungs. Everything around them felt alive. Jason led the way, crawling through darkness, checking corners with a reflex born of dozens of wars. He was running on instinct now. Thought would get you killed here. They reached the core conduit with 4 minutes to spare. Lynn's voice whispered in their ears. "Core overload requires 3 explosives, evenly placed. Detonation must be simultaneous." Jason handed out the charges, assigning Reyes's replacement, a silent human named Marcus, to the center placement. "Don't hesitate," he said. "This thing's got redundancies." Marcus nodded, no emotion in his eyes. The others moved fast, locking the charges in place. The core housing began to hum louder, the ship realizing it had been breached. Then everything went to hell. A door behind them hissed open, not like a mechanical door, but like something breathing out its last breath. And from the shadows stepped another Zarn elite. This one was different, taller, faster. Its armor wasn't just plated, it shimmered with adaptive shielding, reflecting Jason's movements in near real time. Its weapon was fused into its arm, a shifting mass of blades, drills, and fire. Jason shoved Marcus toward the core. "Finish the job." He turned, rifle raised, and fired 3 clean shots into the elite's chest. The bullets bounced off. The monster charged. Jason dodged left, drawing his sidearm and firing point blank into its face. The blast slowed it, but only for a second. The elite backhanded him across the corridor, slamming him into the wall with a sickening crack. Blood filled Jason's mouth. His left arm went numb, broken, maybe worse, but he still stood. Marcus shouted from the core chamber. 2 charges armed, 1 more to go. The elite advanced, blade spinning. Jason grabbed a fuel line off the wall, tore it loose, and sprayed the creature in the face. It roared, staggering back, and that's when Jason lit a flare and shoved it into the beast's chest. The resulting fireball lit up the tunnel like a sun being born. Jason was thrown backward, slamming into the floor, coughing smoke and blood. Last charge set, Marcus shouted. Jason dragged himself toward the team. The elite's body twitched, its armor melted and bubbling. Not dead, not yet. Time to go, Lynn's voice barked in his ear. The team scrambled back through the shaft, dragging Jason with them. He didn't protest. He couldn't. Blood poured from a gash above his eye, and every breath was a razor. They cleared the hull just as the first internal explosion rang out. From the canyon rim, Cale watched as the underside of the dreadnought glowed red, then orange, then white. A column of fire erupted from its spine, and a sound like a god screaming shattered the air. The dreadnought shuddered. Lights died. Parts of its hull collapsed inward. It didn't fall, but it bled. Kyle whispered, "They did it." But not all of them came back. Only 4 figures emerged from the ash. 2 Thaleen, 1 human. And Jason, barely standing, limping, half-conscious, his armor melted into his skin, but alive. Kyle ran to him, catching him just before he collapsed. "You mad bastard," Cale said through clenched teeth. "You actually did it." Jason's lips twitched into a pained smile. "Told you." He passed out before he could finish. They didn't run. That was the first thing the galaxy heard. Not in a formal broadcast, not through a polished coalition network, but through a hacked Zarn comms relay that spat out a single corrupted message in 37 different languages. The humans of Earth did not run, and now the Zarn bleed. The image that accompanied it was raw and shaky, pulled from one of Lynn's drone feeds. It showed the underside of the dreadnought, its belly ripped open by fire, flames erupting from its core as systems failed, and black smoke billowed into the toxic skies of Eridus. For the first time in recorded history, a Zarn dreadnought had been crippled by ground forces. Not a fleet, not an armada, just a handful of soldiers, mostly human, mostly broken, but impossible to ignore. The response was immediate. The Zarn sent everything they had. Within hours, 4 cruisers entered orbit. Gunships dropped like iron rain. Entire sectors of Eridus were pounded with orbital bombardment, as if the planet itself was being punished for daring to fight back. They weren't targeting strategic sites. They were targeting hope. Kyle stood at the edge of the final bunker, overlooking the charred wasteland. The winds carried the distant screams of cities dying a second time. Tunnels caved in across the northern perimeter. They'd lost another 20 resistance fighters in the last 2 hours, but no one ran. The survivors had made their stand in an abandoned mining colony carved into the cliffside. Thick walls, narrow passages, easy to defend. The last safe place on Eridus. Jason lay inside, wrapped in makeshift bandages, his left arm in a splint, ribs cracked, and burns crawling across half his chest. He should have been in a coma, should have been sedated. Instead, he was sitting upright, armor half clipped on, loading his rifle with one hand. Kyle stormed in. "You should be unconscious." Jason grinned, wincing with every breath. "And miss the final act? Come on, Commander. You know me better than that." Cale dropped beside him, offering a pain suppressant. Jason waved it off. Outside, they could hear the drone hum getting louder, the low, vibrating thrum of Zarn forces advancing. Lynn entered, eyes hollow. 3 gunships incoming. Elite squads confirmed. ETA 5 minutes. Kyle nodded. "Then this is it." They began prepping the last of their explosives, not to defend, but to collapse the tunnels behind them. If they were going to die, they'd make sure the Zarn paid for every damn meter of dirt. As they worked, a strange sound filled the air. Jason looked up. "That's not them." Kyle froze. It wasn't Zarn engine noise. It was louder, grittier. It screamed rather than hummed. Then the sky cracked. Streaks of fire ripped across the clouds, trailing smoke and thunder. Dozens of ships. Ugly ones. Metal beasts held together with rust and spite. They screamed toward the surface, guns blazing, human dropships. Earth had come back. Not diplomats, not politicians. Warriors. The first ship hit ground just outside the colony and opened fire instantly, railguns tearing through Zarn formations like paper. A squad of armored humans disembarked, weapons barking, moving with ruthless precision. They didn't come to ask questions. They came to finish what Jason started. Kyle stared in awe. "You called for backup?" Jason coughed, bloody but laughing. "Didn't need to. The footage from the Dreadnought went viral on the Black Net. Earth's got eyes everywhere now. Mercs, ex-soldiers, rebels, hell, even criminals. You make Earth bleed, you better believe Earth comes looking for a fight." By the time the Zarn realized what was happening, it was too late. The humans weren't organized, but they didn't need to be. They fought with instinct. Fury. Madness. And worst of all, they fought like they had nothing left to lose. The battle for Eridus became legend in one afternoon, not because the humans had the best tech, not because they had numbers, but because they wouldn't stop. Kyle and Jason stood side by side as the final wave was pushed back, the colony's edge now filled with bodies, both human and Zarn. The ground was black with blood. The sky glowed red from endless fire. Jason leaned on Kyle, legs barely holding him. "Congratulations, Commander," he whispered. "You're part of history now." Kyle turned to him. "You think the galaxy saw this?" Jason's eyes burned through the smoke. "They didn't just see it. They're gonna remember it." And they did. Across 100 systems, the story spread, of a broken world that stood up, of Earth's warriors who came not with peace, but with vengeance. They called it a rebellion. But among the Zarn, they gave it another name. The Awakening of Earth. A reminder that no matter how dark the galaxy became, when the stars cried for help, humanity answered. And they answered with fire.